Hi students, welcome to the video session. Today we are going to learn the story The Boy and His Shadow, written by J.M. Barrie. J.M. Barrie was a Scottish novelist and playwright. Although he published many popular novels in his lifetime, his most famous work was the play Peter Pan. He later wrote a book on the play called Peter and Wendy. Now let us see the summary of the lesson. The story is an extract from the book Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. Peter Pan, a young boy who never grew up, goes looking for his lost shadow in the Darling family nursery. He finds it in the chest of drawers, but is unable to fix it onto himself. When he finds that it won't stick on by itself, he tries to stick it using soap, but in vain. His sobs of disappointment awaken Wendy, the eldest of the Darling children. When she finds out why Peter is crying, she helps him by sewing the shadow onto his frame. Peter's joy knows no bounds, and in his excitement, he doesn't acknowledge Wendy's help, which upsets her. She refuses to talk to Peter, after which he realizes his folly and apologizes. The two of them becomes friends again. This book, which was based on Barrie's play of the same name, was and continues to have a universal appeal. Barrie infuses the thrill of magic into the story through a young boy who chooses not to grow up, his fairy friend Tinkerbell, and shadows that can lose themselves. This extract sets a base for a friendship between the carefree, eventually youthful Peter and the mature, responsible Wendy. These themes of magic and friendship form the underlying thread of this extract, which makes it so popular. Now let us read the lesson.
This story is about a young boy, Peter Pan, who refused to grow up. Every night, he used to sit by a nursery window and listen to a mother tell bedtime stories to her children, Wendy, Jonathan, and Michael. One day, before Peter could fly away, his shadow got caught and was locked up in a drawer in the nursery.
A moment after the fairy's entrance, the window was blown open by the breathing of the little stars, and Peter dropped in. He had carried Tinkerbell part of the way, and his hand was still messy with the fairy dust. "Tinkerbell," he called softly, after making sure that the children were asleep. "Tink, where are you?" She was in a jug just then and liking it extremely. She had never been in a jug before. "Oh, do come out of that jug and tell me, do you know where they put my shadow?" The loveliest tinkle as of golden bells answered him. It is the fairy language. If you were to hear it, you would know that you had heard it once before. Tink said that the shadow was in the big box. She meant the chest of drawers. Peter jumped at the drawers, scattering the contents onto the floor with both hands. In a moment, he had recovered his shadow, and in his delight, he forgot that he had shut Tinkerbell up in the drawer. Peter had thought that he and his shadow, when brought near each other, would join like drops of water. When they did not, he was very upset. He tried to stick it on with soap from the bathroom, but that also failed. Peter sat on the floor and cried. His sobs woke Wendy, and she sat up in bed. She was not alarmed to see a stranger crying on the nursery floor. She was only pleasantly interested. "Boy," she said, Why are you crying? Peter could be very polite also, having learned the grand manner at fairy ceremonies, and he rose and bowed to her beautifully. She was much pleased and bowed beautifully to him from the bed. What's your name? He asked. Wendy Moira Angela Darling, she replied. What is yours? Peter Pan. Is that all? Yes, he said. He felt for the first time that it was a short name. She asked where he lived. Second to the right, said Peter, and then straight on till morning. What a funny address. No, it isn't, he said. I mean, Wendy said nicely, remembering that she was hostess. Is that what they put on the letters? He wished she had not mentioned letters. Don't get any letters, he said in disgust. But your mother gets letters? Don't have a mother, he said. Oh, Peter, no wonder you were crying, she said, and got out of bed and ran to him. I was crying because I can't get my shadow to stick on, Peter said, rather upset. Besides, I wasn't crying. It has come off? Yes. Then Wendy saw the shadow on the floor, looking so crumpled, and she was frightfully sorry for Peter. How awful, she said, that she could not help smiling when she saw that he had been trying to stick it on with soap. Fortunately, she knew at once what to do. It must be sewn on, she said, just a little importantly. What's sewn? He asked. You're so very ignorant. No, I'm not. I shall sew it on for you, my little man, she said, though he was as tall as she was. It will hurt a little, she warned him. Oh, I shan't cry, said Peter, who believed that he had never cried in his life. He clenched his teeth and did not cry, and soon his shadow was behaving properly, though still a little creased. Perhaps I should have ironed it, Wendy said thoughtfully, but Peter was jumping about in the wildest glee. Alas, he had already forgotten that he must be thankful to Wendy. He thought he had attached the shadow himself. How clever I am, he said. Oh, the cleverness of me! Wendy was shocked. You proud boy, she exclaimed. Aren't you grateful for my help? You helped a little, Peter said carelessly, and continued to dance. A little? She replied, sounding hurt. If I am no use, I can at least go back to sleep. Saying this, she sprang into bed and covered her face with the blankets. Peter pretended to be going away so that Wendy would look up. When this failed, he sat on the end of the bed and tapped her gently. Wendy, he said, don't sleep. I'm sorry. Still, she would not look up, though she was listening eagerly. Wendy, he continued, Wendy, you're the most helpful person that I have ever met. Wendy looked up. Do you really believe that, Peter? Yes, I do. And they were friends again.
Now let us go through the word meanings. Extremely, very much. Scattering, throwing in different directions. Recovered, found, or got back. The grand manner, behavior that will impress. Hostess, here in this lesson, a girl who receives guests in her home. Ignorant, know very little. He was as tall as she was. In this lesson, it means they were both the same age. Clenched his teeth, pressed his teeth together to stop himself from crying. Creased, wrinkled, Wildest glee, great joy, pretended, behaved as if he was going away when he actually wasn't. Students, thank you for learning along. Thank you and have a great day.